Hey everyone, this is Hailey from Cartoonverse, and I'm here today with Deepcut because we are going to be talking about the new upcoming show on Adult Swim called Primal, and it is made by, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but Genndy Tartakovsky, which I've never really said that out loud before, but he's the guy who's made Dexter's Laboratory, Hotel Transylvania, and Samurai Jack, which on this channel me and Michael talked about, I guess a couple years ago now. Also Symbiotic Time, which I liked a lot. When I heard that they were doing a kind of a, I don't know what to call it, they were just doing a movie run of it, like a whole week that they were showing Primal at a theater in LA. I was like, well, I mean, I'm close enough, maybe I'll go, because they're not showing this till October, and this is like a whole week or two before, so I thought this would be a cool opportunity. And they were showing the first 4 episodes out of 5 apparently, and I asked Deepcut, since he lives basically really close to that, and we both went and we saw it, and I thought it'd be really cool if we could share our thoughts about it and what we liked, what we didn't, so you could get a sneak peek at what is to come when it airs on October 7th. This is going to be very spoilery, so if you don't want to get spoiled at all, do not watch this. So Deepcut, what did you think?
So ultimately, I've told you this before, but I thought it was Oscar bait, honestly, which is when something is made with the sole intention of hitting these kind of pseudo-artistic notes in order to garner popularity at award shows. It doesn't feel like someone was passionate about it. It didn't feel like someone set out to say anything or even tell a particular story. It just felt like someone was sitting there trying to impress me for 2 hours, and it just did not work for me.
Yeah, that's like really interesting that I think both of us, I mean, you'll definitely hear my thoughts in a second, but I don't think either of us were like that into it when we were watching it, like the whole time, an hour and a half basically. I was never, that excited for what was coming up in the episode. But it seems like based on articles and just hearing about what other people are saying, it seems like people are really excited, especially like guys mostly. That's most of the people I've seen being seen talking about this. So I'm like, oh shoot, did I watch it wrong? Am I looking at it wrong? But I mean, you agree with me at least, or like you can see what I'm saying when it wasn't like the most entertaining thing. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this may just be my own view of it, or in this case, our view of it. Mm-hmm. Even people at the theater, I remember them being not just hyped for it beforehand, but pretty excited about it afterwards. Me personally, I was grateful we didn't have to see episode 5. And that's not to say this thing is like terrible. It's just, it's hard to really even just classify it as a cartoon outside of the fact that it is technically animated. When we think of American cartoons, they're almost their own genre, the same way that anime really has its own tropes that aren't reliant on the fact that it's animated, because you don't see those in other countries. And this is definitely in that same vein of being its own little genre. It doesn't just feel like a cartoon, it just happens to be animated.
That's really interesting. So we didn't really explain what happened in Primal. So basically it follows the journey of a caveman named Spear and a dinosaur named Fang, which you don't learn the names, but it's just the title of the first episode, so I just kind of figured it out. And as they try to survive and they travel around the world. I don't know why, where they're going, what they're doing, to be honest. Do you know? Do you remember anything?
So that was kind of the issue with it, was this seemed to be pitched as a limited series. So far we know there's 5 episodes. I don't imagine there's going to be like follow-up episodes. So the fact that it was so limited and yet so episodic was really jarring. Usually in a mini-series, it's like watching an extended movie. It's one bigger story that they're telling. Whereas this one was really episodic from the get-go, after they established everything in episode 1. And it just makes me wonder why. Like, how'd you have so few ideas for what feels like should be a long-running show?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess it was just like every episode was kind of just like animal attacks them, flying animal attacks them, water animal attacks them, kind of like big one, a bunch of smaller ones. That was mostly how each episode went. A little different animals, but that was kind of the thing. But also, I think I sent you a link to an article that said they're making 5 more, I believe.
I read that article. I actually didn't see that part. I saw that they were airing the first 5 that they've produced, but it didn't really specify whether or not they were producing more. Generally, you have like your initial order of episodes, and then if it does well, you get the back order for season 1 or an additional order for season 2. But it didn't really seem to clarify whether there would be more. It seemed like it was just the wording of the author, not the wording from any official source.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah, I imagine that's the only reason they left episode 5 out, was they wanted to have, you know, a reason for us to actually watch the show when it airs.
Yeah, I totally thought maybe we were going to see the whole thing, and maybe like us paying for a ticket would have been like, you know, in exchange for seeing the whole thing, but we didn't see the last episode. So I mean, it felt like an ending enough. I mean, unless there actually is some sort of ending to it. I mean, obviously, it'd be a little more
I've read some theories about how it's going to end and how the second to last episode really sets all that up. Because I felt I could see why it also feels like an ending at the end of episode 4, but at the same time, the episode itself just felt entirely formulaic. So it's really hard to, you know, really say it's an ending. But in episode 4, we meet these other cave people who are on the fairer skin side, lighter hair, and they don't seem to have the weapons that our main character has, but he does end up leaving a spear with one of them. And based off of some pseudo caveman history that this person was talking about, it would appear that our main character is going to meet his demise when these other humans ultimately end up killing him in the finale.
Dang, well, there goes more episodes then.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea. I really don't imagine, especially Adult Swim, would want to, you know, extend this unless it came out to be some sort of mega hit, you know? You can't keep something without dialogue going forever.
Yeah, true. So I do want to ask what you enjoyed about it, because I will say I liked the art style, and the animation was really well. And I thought Fang as a character was interesting, because she was a mom, and there was, you know, parallels between Fang and Spear, and also the Mammoth episode was interesting at the end. So what did you enjoy about the show?
A lot of the same things you did. For me, it was these really interesting moments that seemed to actually hint at something deeper, though they never really seemed to deliver. I really enjoyed the end of episode 2, which of course follows him being hunted by these mammoths because he killed their oldest mammoth. And they wanted to get the remains of that mammoth back in order to have their own little, you know, funeral service. You know, elephants in real life have funerals. It's a very interesting, let's call it, phenomenon that's going on. So it's just really interesting to see that play out with these woolly mammoths, you know, in this TV show. And it seemed to hint at some sort of spiritual meaning. Like for the first 2 episodes, I felt like they were like, this was supposed to be some campaign to turn us all into vegans. But it always seemed to go, oh yeah, because, you know, the first episode's about, you know, he's hunting and then other dinosaurs kill his kids. And then he goes to hunt dinosaurs, but then he ends up protecting them from other dinosaurs because he starts to feel sad for them. So there's this weird kind of contradictory nature to humans in it, where we see ourselves as these heroes, especially when we're attacked, but we have to attack to survive. So if there were bigger creatures than humans picking us off, we think of them as evil and wrong, but ultimately they are just doing what we do.
Yeah, good point. And I think the Mammoth episode might have been episode 3, because episode 2 was about Fang and Spear kind of getting along.
Oh, my apologies. Yeah, that one was about them learning how to share food.
Yeah, oh wait, go ahead.
Which was weird. It was, the tone really shifted across these 4 episodes.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was gonna bring me to stuff I didn't really enjoy, and that was kind of like one of them. How, I don't know, just I thought they were getting along at, you know, end of episode 1, but then really no, they weren't. And then episode 2, it's basically the whole episode they're trying to, like, they were just, Fang was just not having it.
You're not wrong. Like, so episode 2, like episode 1 was kind of really dramatic. Something I actually did like about episode 1 was the shadow puppetry scene. Or no, was that in episode 2 as well?
It might have been episode 2.
Okay, yeah. So
he
there's
was
the shadow
hungry
puppetry
and he was like
scene.
making shadow puppets because I think they were they had a fire set up.
Yeah, so it was supposed to be like, this was apparently something he did for his kids, and it was just kind of him remembering them. And then when he turns around and they're not there, it's heartbreaking. But instead, there's this dinosaur who follows him everywhere and eats all of his food, and he literally can't eat. But I always felt like I don't quite remember how this one got resolved, and I think that's because there was no real resolution to it. At some point, they just kind of wrestled around, and then everything was okay. And it felt like a rather weak resolution. But we went from this very dramatic episode 1 about these 2 people whose kids are eaten alive And then episode 2, it's just like, my giant dog basically won't stop eating my food, you know? It was quite the tonal shift. And then episode 3 becomes dramatic again, and then episode 4 is just like weird horror elements. Very interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know, talking about other stuff I like was like kind of about. I would say that like I like the idea of dinosaurs and all these other kinds of creatures, but I just felt like if you're gonna go unscientifically accurate, make them cool looking, because I just felt like, especially like when you got to like giant bats, they were just big bats. Or
if I'm not mistaken, those are the images of those bats are from some sort of folklore, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I've seen those around in other stories before. For me, it felt very disjointed, you know? It isn't world building if it's essentially random. This is something even Pixar managed to do better in its flop, The Good Dinosaur, by showing some rationalization for why this all happened. I'm not saying we necessarily need an answer to why, you know, humans, mammoths, modern animals, dinosaurs, and strange monsters all coexist, but the structure seems to be random as opposed to cohesive. The world isn't expanding, they aren't exploring more of it, but rather each episode feels like we're focusing on an entirely new world. It feels almost slapstick in the way they can just introduce anything without consequences, because nothing can contradict anything.
Yeah, that makes you said it so much better than I could. Yeah, it feels random, like, because every episode was just, you know, they just had to encounter. It was like they went to the icy, you know, very frozen area so soon after they were in like the jungle or whatever, and then it gets super deserty, and it's like, wow, okay. And then he literally didn't even have a winter coat yet. That's how quickly it changed or whatever, and then get into the mammoth thing, which, yeah. But yeah, great point.
It's, you know, world building is establishing more rules that help govern a story, and this does the opposite. It makes it so that you can't really try to predict or guess. Like, someone's, you know, theorizing about how all this will tie in episode 5, but in episode 5 we could be underwater dealing with mermaids and it wouldn't matter. Who knows? Episode 5. Yeah. Place your bets.
So what were your thoughts on like Spear, the caveman?
You know, it's hard for me to say that I had any thoughts about him at all. Yeah. Like, I felt for him when his kids died, and I felt for him when he did the shadow puppetry. And there was, you know, a little glint in his eyes when he returned the tusk of the dead mammoth to its tribe. But ultimately, there's something about this that is really hard to immerse yourselves in. That's something that's really hard to do, I think, with purely physical acting, you know, especially in animation where everything has to be expressive. So you kind of have this contradiction where they want you to take it seriously, but also it's over emotive, so it's kind of funny looking. I personally just didn't feel much for him, and like, I'm grateful I didn't have to see episode 5. Like I said, it was not necessarily that it was bad, it just did nothing for me.
Oh my goodness. Felt nothing. I don't know, I didn't really care too much about him. I felt like he was just too indestructible, and he was just too, because, you know, the whole thing's about, you know, violent creatures attacking them, and I don't know, maybe it's just I'm not one that's totally into just violence for violence sake, which is a lot of what this show felt like to me. And I don't know, I mean, yeah, the shadow puppet part was cool, but I wish we did get more of that, or learn more about his family, or at least knew about his family before they got eaten, which I was like, who are those other people? Oh, okay, they're probably his family. Yeah,
it's kind of this, you know, basic principle of storytelling where you kill off someone's loved one in the first 5 minutes in order to set up some emotional story, but it really falls flat, especially these days. I think, you know, you have to do it really well. I think one thing the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance actually did very well, minor spoilers for episode 1, is I believe it was Rian's love interest was killed off in the first episode, but they spent like a good 45 minutes developing her character and their relationship. So when she was killed, it actually felt like something. She didn't feel like a plot device. She felt like a character that got killed off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so like Rian's story really motivated by that, and this one not so much.
And another thing I mentioned was the violence. What was your thoughts on that? Because, I mean, that was a good portion of what happened, a lot of fighting.
Yeah, so I like good action sequences. You know, they have to be, especially animated ones. There's so much potential. I know you said you like the animation style and the animation here, but I actually just didn't enjoy it so much. It felt like it was trying. It's hard for me to say what methods they used. Usually I can tell if it's like computer puppetry versus like hand drawn. This one seemed to be somewhere in the middle, and it just didn't really work for it. They tried to be dynamic, but they seemed to have some limitations with that. But they also pushed them a little bit. It felt like they were trying to do like 3D action shots with, you know, 2D puppets, and it just didn't work for me. I don't like violence for violence sake. I do enjoy action, but there is a difference between action and violence. But both need to come as a sort of reward for good storytelling, and I just didn't really get that there. I didn't really care for these sequences. I have the same issue with like a lot of Michael Bay films. I feel like the action is just there for action's sake, whereas like an Avengers film, you know, there's a lot of story behind it leading up to this action, so it makes you care about why they're fighting. That's what's important.
Yeah, I think going into this, I kind of knew that's how it would be, and that's just not the kind of thing that I'm into. But so, I mean, it shouldn't be the biggest surprise that I'm not a big fan of this, because, yeah, but I mean, yeah, you went in totally blind, you said, right?
Yeah, I didn't even see the trailer.
Yeah, so maybe if you knew, you would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it was what you see in the trailer is kind of what you're gonna get. I'm not lying here. But yeah, there was a lot of violence, so get ready for that if you're gonna watch it. It wasn't too. I mean, since there's just animals, they don't really get too weird on anything else, so it's pretty tame if you can handle violence. Oh, one other thing I want to talk about, or I want to say that I did not enjoy, just I felt like all the animals, or all Spear did, was just they just screamed at each other, which I feel like in real life they do more than just like have one loud scream, which I'm like, yeah, because even when the animals are talking to each other, it just felt like they were like giving the loudest roar that they could. I don't know, that's just a nitpick I had. I was like, come on.
No, I get it. It's part of why this entire show feels flat, you know? It's very clear that he had very little supervision in this. Like, he has a long history, and after the success of Samurai Jack, according to the article, they were like, so what's next? And he just kind of pitched this idea, and they went with it. And sometimes doing that gives you this really amazing story where the artists can flourish and put themselves in their work. And then other times, they don't really have any purpose for this job, and it shows. And to me, that's what it feels like here. And I try not to judge like anything this harshly as I'm judging this thing, but it's really hard for me not to feel like he just got paid and didn't know what to do.
I felt like he really, I mean, from what I read, it seemed like, you know, he really wanted to make something like this for a long time. It was originally going to be for kids or something. I forgot what the article said, but yeah, and then it's kind of evolved over time. So it's not like, I feel it's not like it's like something he just randomly made, but maybe you're right, like he could do whatever he wanted, and this is what happened, because like when you're constrained sometimes on making a kids show, like with Symbiotic Titan, that turned out great. Have you seen that? You said you didn't see that, right?
I have not, no.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Samurai Jack, not my thing, but I know a lot of people loved that, but you still had to be constrained for the first 5 seasons, or 4, whichever one was the new one. But yeah, so now I guess, like you said, he probably could do whatever he wanted.
Yeah, and it's not even necessarily a matter of being able to do whatever he wanted. It was just not having... It felt like he had the spark to start this and nothing else. I was surprised to hear he'd been developing this for a very long time. I mean, I've written things and I'm very proud of myself, but there are times, especially when working with a friend, where we'll be like, hey, let's work on something together. And trying to force something without, like, you know, a real inspiration for what the entire journey means, that tends to bring out the worst in a project. Ultimately, this may just be my own view on it. Like, the thing about these Oscar bait type projects is that they do often win awards. There are others who may absolutely love the show, you know, what we may think of as a wandering narrative, others may find to be nuanced. What I think of as diversions and distractions, others might consider, you know, breaking away from the mold and doing a more gritty, less traditional exploration. There are moments when it shines, but for me, it's just overshadowed by how utterly boring it is as a whole. The episodes are written as if it's going to be epically long, never-ending series, like, you know, formulaic. Like, you could put these episodes out of order and you wouldn't really notice. And yet, it's a mini-series. It's a contradiction, really.
Interesting. Very nicely said, as usual. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people so far have been enjoying it, so we might be in the minority for the people that do end up watching this. Because I feel like a lot of people that aren't interested are not gonna watch it. I mean, you can tell from the trailer, like, it's, like I said, you could tell what you were getting into, so probably a lot why people are liking this is because they saw it and they thought they would really like it, but for us, not the case, kind of, because you went in blind. I was like, okay, maybe this isn't for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's probably people that are gonna get mad for what we're saying in the, but
totally, and that's why I wanted to put that out there, that it's like just my view. They might find it nuanced. It might just not be the type of puzzle that my brain likes to solve.
Yeah. Cool. Well, anything else you want to say? That's all I had written down, and I can't remember everything else that happened. So yeah.
That pretty much sums it up for me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me with this.
Thank you for having me.
It was pretty cool to watch it early, and it'll be out on October 7th. I'm not sure if it's all at once. It might be in a couple day thing. And are you gonna watch episode 5?
I'm probably gonna see episode 5 since I don't have to sit there and do it all in one go.
Right.
I am just curious. It's like, you know, it's not a morbid curiosity, but I do just want to see if there was some intention to this that pulls it all together.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Same. I'm gonna watch that till the end when it comes out, and we'll see. I don't think we'll do a follow-up video unless this one does really well. But yeah. Thank you guys for listening to this, and let us know what you thought of the show when it comes out. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
Bye.